Bright Cutie. Every student matters.
Hello students, today we will be taking up chapter 5 from your English reader textbook. The name of the chapter is Quality. Before we start the chapter, I would like to ask you, what do you understand by the word quality? Well, quality is actually the distinguished characteristics or features of a thing, or how good a thing is in its looks or its make. For example, you can say quality of food, quality of shoes, quality of clothes, quality of boots, and so on. This all can be known as quality of a thing. But before we read the chapter, I would like to read the snippet first to understand what is the chapter all about. Can a shoemaker be called an artist? Do you think a shoemaker can be called as an artist? Well, if you ask me, I will say yes, because it takes a lot of effort and creativity to create a shoe, right? Yes, if he has the same skill and pride in his trade as any other artist and the same respect for it too, right? If the shoemaker has the same kind of respect as for the some other profession, then yes, it is an art. Mr. Gessler, a German shoemaker settled in London, is a perfect artist. Read the story to see how he devotes his life to his art. So now here the story is about a shoemaker, Mr. Gessler, who is a German shoemaker and is settled in London, and he is a perfect artist. Now we'll be reading how he devotes his life to his art, to his profession. Alright? Let's read. I knew him from the days of my extreme youth because he made my father's boots. So now here the author is telling that he had known Mr. Gessler since a very long time, since the time he was young, he was in his youth, because Mr. Gessler had prepared shoes, boots for the author's father. He lived with his elder brother in his shop, which was in a small by street in a fashionable part of London. Mr. Gessler, he used to live with his elder brother in his shop. They used to stay together in the shop, which was in a small by street in a fashionable part of London. The shop was in a small by street as in a kind of a lonely lane, you can say, or a narrow lane, you can say. So this shop was in a by street in a fashionable part of London, in a posh area, a fancy area of London, the area where a lot of people visit. The shop had a certain quiet distinction. There was no sign upon it other than the name of Gessler Brothers, and in the window a few pairs of boots. So this shop, it was very different to the other shops in the vicinity. This shop had just the name, the board with the name Gessler Brothers. There was no other sign, there was no other wall hanging or anything on the window. There was nothing at all. Just a board with the name Gessler Brothers, and there were few pair of boots which were there in the window. No other sign except for the board saying Gessler Brothers and few pair of boots in the window. He made only what was ordered, and what he made never failed to fit. Now Mr. Gessler, he always used to make whatever was ordered. He never used to make, extra pairs and just keep them. No. Whatever was ordered to him, he only used to make that. And whatever he used to make was an extraordinary fit to the customer. That means the quality of his work was so good that the fit with which the shoe was made or the boot was made, it was exactly the way it should fit the customer. To make boots, such boots as he made, seemed to me then and still seems to me mysterious and wonderful. Now, the author is explaining his feelings. He says the kind of boots Mr. Gessler used to make, they were some extraordinary piece of boots, some extraordinary piece of art, and they used to look wonderful and mysterious to me. Mysterious as in the kind of effort, the kind of labor Mr. Gessler used to put, the kind of you can say artistry, or you can say the kind of art he used to put in his work was kind of mysterious. That was so unique that it was wonderful and mysterious to the author. I remember well my shy remarks one day while stretching out to him my youthful foot. So now the author is saying that I still remember a shy remark which I made to Mr. Gessler while I had gone once there to his shop to try or to order a shoe or a boot, and when he had stretched his youthful foot as in because he was young at that time, the author. So he says, when I had stretched out my foot in my young age to him to order the boot or to take the size of the boot, I made a shy remark to him. Shy remark as in, you can say, a remark made nervously. Isn't it awfully hard to do, Mr. Gessler? And his answer, given with a sudden smile from out of the redness of his beard, it is an art. So now the author says that he made a shy remark to Mr. Gessler once when he had gone to order a boot from him, and while he stretched his youthful foot towards him, he made a remark and said, "Isn't it awfully hard to do, Mr. Gessler?" The author wondered that isn't the whole work hard? So he asked him, "Isn't it hard to do, Mr. Gessler?" And Mr. Gessler answered, he smiled, he gave a sudden smile, and then he answered, "It is an art." "It is an art" is a German accent which actually means it is an art. So this was said with a German accent. So Mr. Gessler, with a sudden smile which burst on his face, so he said, "It is an art." Also, the author has mentioned redness of his beard. So probably he meant that in literal sense, the beard was red in color. It was not possible to go to him very often. His boots lasted terribly, having something beyond the temporary, some essence of boot stitched into them. So now the author is telling us that it is not very easy to visit him very often, and the reason behind it is that Mr. Gessler's boots are made in such a way that they were of such good quality that they used to last really long. Lasted terribly means lasted very long. So when the author says it was not possible to go to him very often, his boots lasted terribly means lasted for very long. Having something beyond the temporary, some essence of boot stitched into them. Some essence of boot stitched into them means some kind of real fine art or quality which was, the boot was stitched in such a manner that it would last for a really long time. There was such kind of essence, such kind of art, such kind of intrinsity, you can say, was stitched into the boot so that it would last long. See, here is the shop. We can see some boots here on the windows, the ones probably which are ordered, and there is this board called as Gessler Brothers. We cannot see any other sign here in the picture. One went in, not as into most shops, but restfully as one enters a church, and sitting on the single wooden chair waited. So now the author, he is telling us the scene, the he is giving us the picture of how the shop looked from inside. So he says it did not look like the other shops. When you will go inside the shop, you will not see the kind of atmosphere or the kind of interiors what you see in the other normal shops. It was like entering a church. How peacefully, how in a silence mode, peacefully you enter a church. It is exactly the same way you enter Mr. Gessler's shop. When you enter the shop, you would get that kind of vibes. You would find a single wooden chair and you would wait there for Mr. Gessler to come. A guttural sound and the tip-tap of his slippers beating the narrow wooden stairs, and he would stand before one without coat, a little bent, in leather apron, with sleeves turned back, blinking, as if awakened from some dream of boots. Now, when the author has already described the interiors or the atmosphere of the shop from inside, now he tells us then that while one waits there on the single wooden chair, the person who's waiting, the customer or the author himself would say, he would see Mr. Gessler coming down from the stairs. Now, what appearance Mr. Gessler has? He would, a guttural sound, guttural means harsh and grating, a harsh sound, and tip-tap of his slippers. So Mr. Gessler would come down from the narrow stairs, narrow wooden stairs, and the tip-tap of his slippers. When we climb the stairs down, or when we come down of the stairs, the tip tap on the wooden stairs, the sound which is made by the slippers, that sound is tip tap sound, and a harsh sound made the author aware of Mr. Gessler's presence. Mr. Gessler would stand before one without coat. He would stand before the customer without a coat, a little bent, probably he is little old, so his back, his spine is a little bent, in leather apron. He would be wearing a leather apron with sleeves turned back, with sleeves of the apron turned back, blinking his eyes, as if awakened from some dream of boots. It looked as if he was in some dreamland where it's all about boots and shoes and leather of the boots and all that. So it looked like as if he is awakened from some dream of boots, and he would blink like that. And I would say, "How do you do, Mr. Gessler? Could you make me a pair of Russian leather boots?" So now the author says that I asked Mr. Gessler, "How do you do, Mr. Gessler?" The author is saying that I asked his well-being, and then I asked him, "Could you make me a pair of Russian leather boots?" He asks, "Can you please make a Russian leather pair of boots for me?" Without a word, he would leave me, retiring whence he came, or into the other portion of the shop, and I would continue to rest in the wooden chair, inhaling the incense of his trade. Now, when the author asked Mr. Gessler if he could make a pair of boot for him, Mr. Gessler just retired as in he just went away without saying a word. Silently, without even communicating, Mr. Gessler just heard the question from the author and he just went away from there. Without a word, he would leave me retiring whence he came, or into the other portion of the shop. He probably went into the other portion of the shop, leaving the author there where he was already present. And I would continue to rest in the wooden chair, and the author would sit on that same wooden chair and continue to rest and wait for him, inhaling the incense of his trade. Incense of his trade means that was a boot shop. So the smell of the leather or boot making or the other chemicals which go in the boot making process, that smell, that incense, that fragrance you can say, or you can smell is a better word, you can say smell was all there in the all around the shop, inside the shop. So the author, he says that I still wait there in the wooden chair, inhaling the fragrance or smell which is there in the shop about the boots, the boot smell. Soon he would come back holding in his hand a piece of gold brown leather. And soon Mr. Gessler came back and he was holding a leather which was golden brown in color. With eyes fixed on it, he would remark, "What a beautiful beast!" Now, his eyes, Mr. Gessler's eyes, it was fixed on the leather which he was holding in his hand. Probably he was admiring it. Probably he was in awe of the leather which he was holding. He was so much into his art of making boots that he admired every single tits and bits of the leather or boot making process. So he says, "What a beautiful piece." That means, what a beautiful piece. This is again German accent, and he said, "What a beautiful piece." When I too had admired it, he would speak again. "When do you want them?" And I would answer, "Oh, as soon as you conveniently can." So now the author is telling, once Mr. Gessler is done admiring the leather which he was holding, and I also was done admiring the leather, then he would communicate with me and he would say, "When do you want them?" This is again a German accent. When do you want them? That means when do you want them? As in by when, till what time, till when, till which date or which day. So when do you want them? And I would answer, the author would answer, "Oh, as soon as you conveniently can." As in, as soon as you can make them conveniently, whenever you are comfortable, it means. And he would say, "Tomorrow fortnight." That means tomorrow fortnight. Or if he were his elder brother, "I will ask my brother." And then he says, probably maybe say tomorrow fortnight, and then he says again, "Or I will ask my brother." Okay? Then I would murmur, "Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Gessler." "Good morning," he would reply, still looking at the leather in his hand. Mr. Gessler was so much into his art of boot making that he would even reply good morning to the author in return when he had said good morning, when author had said good morning, still looking at the leather. Mr. Gessler was so involved in his art. So he was still looking at the leather, admiring the leather, or probably thinking about it, how beautifully the leather was made, or how beautiful the leather was, and how can he make the boot out of it. So he was still, engrossed in that leather, and then he replied good morning to the author when he said thank you and good morning. And as I moved to the door, I would hear the tip-tap of his slippers going up the stairs to his dream of boots. And as soon as the author goes out of the shop, he says that I again started hearing the tip tap of his slippers, which actually meant that he's climbing up the stairs again and going back to his dream of boots. See, this is the author and this is Mr. Gessler. We can see Mr. Gessler is an old man and author is, he looks like a young fellow. I cannot forget that day on which I had occasion to say to him, "Mr. Gessler, that last pair of boots creaked, you know." So now author is telling that there was one opportunity, one point in time when he got the opportunity of telling Mr. Gessler that the pair of boots which Mr. Gessler made for him, the last one, it creaked. I cannot forget that day. The author is saying that day I still remember so strongly that when I got the chance to say to him, Mr. Gessler, that last pair of boots creaked. That last pair which you made for me, they made sound. You know, he looked at me for a time without replying, as if expecting me to withdraw or qualify the statement, then said, "It shouldn't have creaked." And now, when the author told him that the last pair which he made for him creaked, Mr. Gessler, he was kind of, he couldn't believe actually, because he knew that he was so fine with his art of boot making that nothing can go wrong. So when the author told about the creaking sound in his boot, Mr. Gessler looked at him as if he was, kind of trying to believe what he said. So it looked like as if he is trying to say that take your words back. Expecting me to withdraw or qualify the statement. Then he said, "It shouldn't have creaked." Then in a German accent again, he said, "It shouldn't have creaked. It shouldn't have made noise." "It did, I am afraid." That's what the author said. It did, I'm afraid. This is true. "You got them wet before they found themselves." So now in again in a German accent, he says, "You got them wet before they found themselves." So now the Mr. Gessler, he says to the author, "You get them wet." As in, if they are wet, they would of course make sound. So you got the boots wet. "I don't think so." The author replied that "I don't think so, they were wet." At that, he lowered his eyes as if hunting for memory of those boots, and I felt sorry I had mentioned this grave thing. So when the author replied that "I do not think so that the boots were wet," so Mr. Gessler, he lowered his vision, he lowered his eyes as if he was trying to remember when he made those boots, when he made those pair of boots. And while Mr. Gessler was thinking of, trying to recall when he made those boots, the author, seeing his expression, he felt bad. He felt sorry for bringing up this issue to him. "Send them back," he said. "I will look at them." Then again in a German accent, Mr. Gessler said, "Send them back. I will look at them." "Some boots," he continued slowly, "are bad from birth. If I can do nothing with them, I take them off your bill." Now in again the German accent, Mr. Gessler said, Some boots are bad from birth. If I can do nothing with them, I take them off your bill." So now Mr. Gessler is saying that since the time of birth, from the time of birth, some boots are bad. As in, from the scratch, when they are started, when they start becoming a boot, the leather is stitched and the process. So from the scratch, when the process starts, some boots are bad. They do not come out properly in a good manner. So he says, if I am not able to repair them or fix them, then I will take them out of your bill. As in, I'll reduce the money of your bill for these boots. Once only, I went absent-mindedly into his shop in a pair of boots bought in an emergency at some large firm. So now the author is saying, I got an opportunity where absent-mindedly, just once, I entered his shop and I was wearing a pair of boots which I had in emergency bought from some big firm. He took my order without showing me any leather, and I could feel his eyes penetrating the inferior covering of my foot. Now the author is saying that in some emergency I had to buy a pair of boots from a larger firm. So absent-mindedly, once I went to Mr. Gessler's shop and I was wearing those pair of boots. Mr. Gessler took my order. When I gave my order to Mr. Gessler for a new pair of boots, he did not show me any leather. Instead, he was continuously watching my boots, which I was already wearing, and he was trying to, make out that he was trying to figure out from where I would have bought these boots, and then how the inferior covering of my foot would be there inside the boot. I could feel his eyes penetrating the inferior covering of my boot. Mr. Gessler had that kind of vision that he could actually make out what kind of a boot it was, how the foot would feel inside that boot. He was such a good artist. At last he said, "Those are not my boots." And then he says, after a lot of monitoring, Mr. Gessler said, "Those are not my boots. Those are not my boots." The tone was not of anger, nor of sorrow, not even of contempt, but there was in it something quiet that froze the blood. He put his hand down and pressed a finger on the place where the left boot was not quite comfortable. So now what happens? The tone of Mr. Gessler, that was not of anger. He wasn't angry. Neither was he sad or pained. Sorrow means sadness or pain. So he wasn't pained. He wasn't in an angry mood. Not even of contempt. What is the meaning of contempt? Contempt means a feeling of disrespect. So here it means that he did not even have that look of being disrespected. No, neither was he angry, nor was he feeling disrespected, neither was he sorrow, neither was he pained. But something was there that froze the blood. What was there in the look? Something was there in that look that froze the blood. Froze the blood means horrified. The author was horrified. He somehow, he was, that look which Mr. Gessler gave, it kind of horrified the author. He put his hand down and pressed a finger on the place where the left boot was not quite comfortable. So Mr. Gessler, he put his hand down and pressed a finger on the place of the left boot where it was not quite comfortable. He already knew, he had that sense. Just by seeing the boot, he knew what is the problem, where exactly the problem is in the boot. So he put his his finger at a place on the left foot where it was not really comfortable. "It urged you there," he said. "Those big worms have no self-respect." And then again in a German accent he says, "It hurts you there. Those big firms have no self-respect." Mr. Gessler, as I said, had a sharp eye. So he says, "It hurts you there. These big firms, they do not have any kind of self-respect." And then, as if something had given way within him, he spoke long and bitterly. And then it felt as if he's, trying to carry all his emotions together, and he said whatever was there in his heart. He was bitter about whatever he was speaking. He spoke for long, and whatever he spoke was bitter. It was the only time I ever heard him discuss the conditions and hardships of his trade. That was the only day, the only time when author says that I heard about the hardships and the conditions of his boot making business.